name's Anita Daher. This is my most recent book, You Don't Have to Die in the End. And it is a pleasure for me today to bring you sort of a rapid fire reading. We're just going to whiz right through the book. But before we do, I would like to introduce you to my accompaniment, Mr. James Daher. You may recognize him from his... Take the mask, what?
Hiding and recognize me with his mask.
Oh, true. You may recognize him from his scintillating online book review of You Don't Have to Die in the End. If you haven't seen it yet, you really should check it out. Okay, let's do this thing. This book, You Don't Have to Die in the End, is about a girl, 16-year-old Eugenia. She's had some tragic circumstance in her life. Her father died by suicide when she was 8, and she's not made the best choices since then. So we meet her when she's 16, and she's started down a certain path, and she ends up in front of a judge before long, and it looks like she's going to be incarcerated. But she's given an opportunity from the judge to instead take part in an intensive support and supervision program, which is a real program with Canada's youth criminal justice system. So it's a redemption story. She heads into the mountains as she has a chance to look at life a little differently. But of course, there's also plenty of opportunity for things to go terribly wrong. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a novel. So I'm just going to, like I say, I'm just going to go very quickly through the book and give you many readings to give you a taste of it. So we will start simply with chapter 1, the first page.
Good place to start.
When I drank, memories flattened and smoothed into river stones, skipped a surface shiny as a spoon. TV ads that said it was like looking through a drinking glass were meant to scare you straight, keep you from driving. But I wasn't the one at the wheel. If I were, I wouldn't be following some drunk on the street. Luda pounded my shoulder. Earth to Eugenia, they said. You gotta watch. Tell me if anyone's coming. I could see well enough, but my mouth hurt and I didn't feel like answering. When we stopped by the tracks to share a Mickey of Jaeger, they smacked at my shoulder but missed and hit my jaw, called me a wuss because I wouldn't keep drinking. A punch didn't mean nothing. It was just how they communicated. Luda taught me to punch first and ask questions later. Not a bad policy in this town. Fort St. Luc was not for the delicate. It was also not for the stupid. We'd been bored and looking for trouble when this cowboy stumbled out of the Roundup Roadhouse on Main. Luda said we'd follow just for grins, freak him out a little. With man-high ridges on either side, the guy had nowhere to go but forward. So much snow. Not unusual for December in this back-ass northern town. But there were days you wished you were anywhere else but here. Mountains to the west, dry lands to the east. This was supposed to be a ranching sweet spot. Felt like being stuck. When you couldn't go anywhere, you looked for a diversion. All right. And we'll slide ahead to somewhere else.
Chapter 2?
I'm not sure if it's chapter 2. There was the nod. Luda's signal that I should join them. Girly girl in the pool hall had given Luda attitude, some glammed up bougie girl, hair in her eyes, putting on sass for the sake of her friends, all badass for cutting school on a Friday afternoon. Amateur. Took our table like she didn't know we were using it, shoved Luda and made like she'd accidentally fallen into them, like it was some big joke. Then she took her finger, ran it soft down the side of Luda's face. I expected them to shove the little bun, tell her where to go, but they just stood there, frozen, mouth open. I don't even think they were breathing. Then Glam Girl laughed, all cruel-like, and said, "Don't you wish?" and spat in their face. Her friends called her Justine, just in time to get a beating. The Luda I knew should have come out swinging, but their face was stone, the spittle shining in fluorescent light. Then they smiled like they knew something, and I got goosebumps down to my toes. They spun and walked out, signaled for me to follow, then keyed a giant F-U on the hood of the only other car in the lot. Had to be Justine's or one of her friends. Same difference. Then we waited. Tick, tock. Justine and friends buffaloed down the back stairs, saw me and Luda waiting on them. They had to know they were screwed. Luda was big, and I didn't give up. "Go ahead, my little pony," Luda mocked. "You got us 2-1. No fear on girly girl's porcelain face, but safe bet her plumbing was about to get active. "I got no argument with you." "No?" Luda stepped aside so she could see the hood. Justine's face was deadpan. "Geez, that's too bad." She and her friends shuffled sideways along the limestone. Collectively, they looked like a poof-haired crab skittering into the heat of this intolerable day. I looked a question at Luda, ready to fight, but they only frowned and said, "What the hell did you do to my new car?" came a roar from behind, and I realized it wasn't Luda and me that those girls had skittered away from. It was the great Kazoo. Chris Kaczynski was an abomination of nature, a giant from the moment he was sprung from the womb. Now in his early 20s, he was big like Bigfoot with meaty slabs for fists you didn't want to see the wrong side of. He was also quiet, always had been. He worked at the library, which meant even his job was hushed. He wasn't quiet now. "I'm gonna kill you!" Kaz grabbed me with those hands, and I watched the world tip sideways, then erupt in white agony as he bowled me across the gravel lot. Holy crap, pain, like hot Hades. About 15 feet from where I'd begun, I groaned and pushed myself upright. Kaz had Luda off the ground, held by their shirt collar against the bricks of the building. Their knees were bent toward their gut, while hands flapped and mouth gaped like they'd just been punched. Hard. They were pale as the limestone behind their head, as if all the blood in their face had dropped to fill the hole in their stomach. Kaz shifted, spat out a surprised, "You're a girl." A whistling sound took the place of whatever Luda tried to say back. I don't remember getting up, never mind walking or stumbling, but somehow I was behind Kaz, unsure what I might do other than tap him on the shoulder. Okay, there was one thing. I readied to accept the consequence of my idiocy, lifted a shaky leg, and kicked the back of his knees.
Bad idea.
Maybe.
Totally bad idea.
Next. "So, what do you want me to say?" "You admit what you've done and that you know you were wrong. If you plead guilty, there may be another option for you." "What kind?" "There's a program called Intensive Support and Supervision, an alternative sentencing, a condition for probation. It would allow you to attend classes, receive treatment, and gain work skills in a more open environment than a juvenile incarceration facility." Sounds like bullshit. It's not. "How come I haven't heard of it?" "It's only considered in certain cases." I looked at him a question. "Usually if there are mental health issues or other extenuating circumstances." "No." "You are guilty, Eugenia." "Not like you mean. I'm not nuts and I'm not sorry. She had it coming." "The girl is in hospital." A sour taste rose in the back of my throat. I'd barely hit her, except I knew that wasn't true. Something had happened, something I could hardly recall. It was like I'd been outside my body for part of it. Whatever it was, it scared me. But that was nobody's business but mine. I itched to touch my bruised knuckles, press into them. I wouldn't give Boyer that satisfaction, not the way he looked at me, triumph already bleeding through. "No." Boyer looked at me a moment longer, then closed my file. "Let's go then." Next. "You gonna put animals in there?" "Soon enough," Mary said, climbing into a tall chair at the kitchen island, chin-nodding for me to do the same. She wiped her hands and offered one to shake. "Mary Franz," she said, "house mother and educational supervisor." She nodded toward Heather. "Heather Gobbett is our psychologist. She'll be meeting you for individual as well as group sessions." "Wait, what?" Her eyes were laughing, though she kept a straight face. "We don't just bake scones, you know. Everybody does double duty." "Sometimes triple," Heather added. "Sometimes more than that." Pleased to meet you, I stammered. Mary opened the folder, tapped the top of it, flowers scattering about the page. Rule 1, drink or drugs, you're out. Obviously. Another tap. Fighting or threats, and you're out. Okay. Smoking only in designated smoking sheds. Don't smoke. No gambling. Be respectful. No use of firearms, hunting knives, or anything else that might be used as a weapon without supervision. Staff may search your bunk at any time. Anything else? Lights out, 10 p.m., rise and shine by 6. Oh, that hurts. Mary grinned. You'll get used to it. I took the sheet and read a few additional notes about listening to staff and doing as I was told, plus guidelines for visitors and phone calls, all with the dire punctuation of, do it or you're out. Zoom ahead. Zoom, zoom, zoom.
With chapter 2?
I don't know. It's not, no, this is well into it now. Here we are. Oh, it's chapter 9. The work was no easier my second morning. After breakfast, we separated the geldings from the mares, babies, and studs and herded them into a separate field. Afterward, Frankie, Nathan, and I were left to clean the pens while brothers Rick and Jimmy went off with Hayden to weed a garden. I don't much mind the smell of horse crap, Nathan said, shoveling it onto the trailer. Do tell, I drawled. Frankie smiled. I mean, don't get me wrong, crap is crap. I'm not saying that cleaning pens is my preferred chore around here, but compared to other kinds, horse crap is a pile of roses. Or close, I said. That's what I'm saying. I mean, it's all natural, right? Not like pig crap or cow crap. Or human crap, Frankie added. Yeah, that'd be worse. It's all about the feed. The more bad stuff you put in, the worse comes out. Hang on, I leaned on my shovel. Are you calling Mary and Heather's cooking bad? Oh, sweet Jesus, no. But animals that stick to grass and the like are a joy to shovel up after. A joy, I deadpanned. Really? Nathan raised his brows at me. Oh, I get it. You're hacking on me. He looked back and forth between me and Frankie. The both of you. Clearly, we've not spent as much time as you have contemplating crap, Frankie teased. Maybe you should. You don't want to think about what they must be feeding those cows and pigs to get the stink that comes out the other end. It's not natural, that's for sure. Neither is this conversation, Frankie said. Unable to hold back any longer, Frankie and I doubled over laughing. You're quite the educated fella, Nathan, I said, removing my glove to wipe away my tears. He gave me a funny look, then glanced at Frankie, who stopped laughing. Coughed. I say something wrong? Nathan grinned, slow and wide. Nah, he said, and turned back to his shoveling. That was weird. Any awkwardness was soon wiped away by Nathan's continued chatter, which had now turned to dung beetles and fire ants. You ever get bit by one of those, Jeannie? Only my family called me Jeannie, but before I could sort out my feelings about that, he was into a story. This guy up here a few years back, 2 years maybe, longer than that, it was before you and I got here, Frankie said. 3 years, 5 maybe. The way Tammy tells it, there was this guy who really loved eating, never stopped, even though he was skinny as a zipper. Turn sideways, stick out his tongue, I said. And he looks like a zipper. Yeah, you heard that one, Jeannie? I guess. It was a good moment. Nathan's sunny nature lightened the air and Frankie sweetened it. They were nice to be around, even while shoveling shit. Anyway, the way Tammy tells it, he wasn't the brightest bugger and on the lazy side. Slider. You've been talking to Tammy. She calls us all that at first. Not me, Frankie said. Aren't you special then? Anyhow, this guy, not a slider neither. Well, maybe. Anyway, he was eating peanut butter and honey sandwiches, and because he'd get all in a panic if he didn't have snacks with him at all times, he had another one in his pocket. The way Tammy tells it, he was lipping off about taking a break and sat himself down on the top of the hill, not realizing he was sat down on a nest or whatever. Tammy kept trying to tell him, and this guy kept lipping off until Tammy finally said, well, you know Tammy. That we do, Frankie said. So Tammy said whatever, except not in those words, and went back to work. Wasn't 30 seconds later before this guy was screeching like 3 crows on a bagel and heading for the hills. Those ants crawled all up inside his legs and got at the honey, which had leached through the wrapper and into his pants. Frankie grinned. So the moral of the story is don't talk shit to Tammy. I finished.
You shouldn't swear so much.
4 hours past sunrise. Mist clung to the valley as if reluctant to leave. Once the cloud overhead moved on, it would burn off. But for now, it gave the feeling of being somewhere other, far away from a damaged world. The air was soft, my companions silent. The horses waited calm in pens, thanks to Rick and Jimmy. "They're good boys," No had said to me after breakfast as Rick and Jimmy played a game that involved exchanging punches to the jaw with escalating force. Each punch was followed by loud guffaws. Not too complicated and hard workers. "You stop that before you brain damage each other," Mary scolded and sent them to scrape their plates. I was pretty sure any damage had long since been done. Onward. All the way to chapter 14.
14,
You got 5 minutes, Slider. Tammy's mood hadn't improved since her return from Crooked Camp. It was a good bet she'd wolf down her breakfast extra fast just to make me look slow. "Name's Eugenia," I growled, setting my coffee mug beside my plate. "Try it out." Tammy narrowed her eyes. "Until I tell you otherwise, your name is Dirt." If Noah or any others took issue with the way she spoke to me, I couldn't tell. I clamped my mouth shut, scraped what was left of my breakfast into the trash, and followed Tammy outside. At the shed, she motioned for me to pick up a shovel, then led me beyond the bunkhouses to a flat space cleared of rock and shrubs not far from a weathered outhouse. "Start digging." It had to be said. What, my own grave? "We need an outdoor crapper, and since you're such a shit, I figure you're well suited. Dig a hole 3 feet deep, 2 feet square. When you're done, we'll move the box from that old hole to the new one." "There are 2 bathrooms inside the lodge. Why do we need an outhouse?" The fires of hell gathered beneath Tammy's skin. "Fine," I said. "No problem." It was like she wanted me to take a swing at her, was pushing for it. Tempting, but I had no intention of getting booted. I would hold tight to days like yesterday, hanging out with Nathan and Frankie. A break from my miserable life. With a final glower, she left me to my task. I imagined clocking her a good one. Took the daydream a step further, saw her face shatter in a million pieces like it was made of glass. Fueled by anger, I placed boot on shovel and pushed. Time turned irrelevant, each moment marked with a satisfying stab and heave. I didn't notice Tammy's return until she opened her stinking pie hole of a mouth. "Where'd you learn to use a shovel?" she snarled. "A 2-year-old knows how to put her back into it. What kind of a soft life have you been living?" I felt heat rise up on my neck, but kept digging. Not soft. Tammy walked away, cursing under her breath. She knew nothing about me. No one did, not the truth of me. What I told Nathan and Frankie didn't even scratch the edge of it. Dark thoughts lodged deep, simmered and stewed. Finally, the hole dug, I set the shovel aside, pulled myself out, and fell back against freshly piled soil. "Think you're finished?" Mid-morning sun radiated from behind Tammy's hat and made her appear faceless. Her words came from nothingness. Painfully, I stood, brushed myself off. "Yes, I think you miscalculated. 2 feet wide, 3 feet deep. That's what you said. Keep digging." I muttered into my shirt collar. "I hope you die in the woods and that ravens pick out your eyeballs." Tammy pushed her face close to mine. "What was that, Slider?" Mouth clamped. I took a step back.
Ooh, little bit anxiety.
Next. The humidity wasn't as oppressive as it had been before the storm, and the woods smelled green and cool. It was also bugger wet, and I slipped in the mud twice before I found my feet. Behind the piney boughs, I heard a nicker. At least I thought I did. It could have been a squirrel or a bird or most anything. It hadn't been that loud. In search of the source, I crab-walked up a slope not far off the trail. Definitely a nicker. There he was, in a clearing at the base of the slope, ears pointed my way, grazing with his buddies. At least they'd stuck together. Plus, they'd been joined by one more. One of the missing horses? Found them, I called out, then mumbled stupid buggers as I contemplated the slick and muddy slope before me. One careful step, then another. I angled my body sideways, placed my boot heels on jutting stones, crushed pungent clumps of yarrow. Nope, I cried out as I twisted and slid on my ass all the way to the bottom. Great. I wiped muddy paws on now filthy jeans and reached for my hat. Movement made me shift my head. My blood turned ice. It was a mountain lion, a motherfucking cougar, not 3 feet from where I sat, vulnerable. She stared at me, eyes rimmed thick with black, like the coal you see on those hieroglyphs of Egyptian princes and princesses, her tawny fur with its darker shadings down the sides of her nose and around her snow-white kiss of her mouth and chin gave the impression of a skull. Her bunched muscles screamed power and my imminent demise.
But you're still here, right?
We'll leave it at that.
Again with the swearing.
Well, let's see. Okay, onward. Next. Are you ready for this?
Okay, no.
Don't be scared.
Okay.
Ole flicked a radio switch. Base, this is Captain America. You there? While Ole called the ranch, Noah explained how things would go. We would meet with Boyer and talk things through. After that, we'd get back up in front of the judge, as soon as Boyer could arrange a hearing. I'm pulling for you, Eugenia. I really am. But we can't have you breaking the rules and getting away with it. I can't let you slide on this, even if I wanted to. How would that look? What if we get shut down? Where would that leave Frankie and the others? I wanted to tell him again that it wasn't me, but he wasn't listening, so I kept my mouth shut. No one's answering, boss, Ole said. Don't worry about it, we'll call from the ground. My stomach swirled with the motion of Ole tilting the aircraft to bring it around, line up with the runway. A woman's voice on the radio told him he was cleared to land. A gentle thud indicated the opening of the landing gear doors. Then I readied for the bump on landing. Flying wasn't so bad, but I preferred the in-air part over landing and takeoff. A horn blasted. Ole shouted something in Norwegian. Panic exploded from the center of my stomach. What happened? Landing gear didn't lock, Ole said. He tapped at red lights on the control panel and we climbed back up into blue sky as a voice on the radio said she checked the missed approach and asked if there was a problem. Before he moved up front to assist Ole, Noah put a hand on my shoulder. Air traffic control will get out their binocs and tell us what they see. What will they see? My belly was full of hornets. The landing gear fully extended is my hope. Just a hiccup? I looked again at the red lights. Why are those still on? Ole and Noah exchanged a look. Could be an indicator problem, Ole said, or the landing gear hasn't extended. Noah called the ranch. Base, come in. Still no response. Don't worry, Noah assured me. Everything will be fine. Fire trucks pulled up to the runway, lights flashing. Ole circled around again and the controller cleared him for a flyby. We're going to buzz the control tower, Noah explained. There was a figure in the glass tower cab, binoculars glued to their face. The controller's voice crackled through the radio. We can confirm your gear is only partially extended, she said. Repeat, only partial. Ole's voice was calm. Roger Tower, we'll try a manual extension. The controller cleared him into a holding position south of the airport. It felt like we were circling forever. Time felt distorted. I wanted to believe this wasn't really happening, that it was a dream or something. Noah peeled back a piece of gray felt between the pilot and co-pilot seat. He pumped the exposed lever. After about 50, he stopped, rubbed his shoulder, then pumped again. The lights remained red. Those should be green, right? I asked. Right, Ole said, his voice raised above Noah's grunting effort. They exchanged another look, and Ole nodded as if Noah had spoken. He radioed the control tower and took the aircraft out of the holding pattern. Noah looked grave. You know crash position? I'd seen enough movies and showed him I did, adjusting for the pain in my torso. We're going to do one more low and over so the controller can see what's what, and then we're going to go slow as we can and land with the gear as it is. Onward.
Oh, wait a minute. You skipped a... I read the book, yeah. Of course.
You know what happens.
It's all fine.
Shh, shh. Don't give it away. Don't give it away. Well, yeah, we know that. Chapter 30. We're getting there. I leaned back against the dumpster behind the Inky Mart, laughed. What was it that Heather had said? I was always exactly where I was meant to be. I pulled a long neck from the case beside me. Luda's voice rang out in my head. That's what I'm talking about. I clinked bottles with their ghost. They'd known Justine for 5 minutes, and just like that, love. My best friend forever, not so forever. 5 damn minutes and I'd been replaced. How? That's what I wanted to know. Crazy. Who's crazy? Shut up, Luda. I needed to kill that something inside that was hard and hurting, or fuzz it up a little. I needed not to care, not feel. I tipped the bottle, drank down half in one swallow, and then another swallow, and another. That's what I'm talking about. After the first bottle, a second. I'd finished 4 bottles before I had to pee. Giggled out loud, remembered the story Darcy told about the bucket. And then I was sad again. But still sober enough to use the can in Jumbo Joe's hot dogs next to the Inky Mart. Back outside, I leaned into painted concrete, willed the wall to straighten my frame so I could move on. The sun heat against my cheek soothed almost as much as the beer, so I stayed that way until a woman walked by, handed me $5, which made me laugh, which made it hard to stay upright. It was like the building moved and moved again every time I tried to find it. Jump ahead. The world was full of empty spaces where grief steps in, haunts shadows, hides from light and lessons learned. Regret in darkness grows in sorrow. I am salt with tears unshed, a pillar to shatter in the wind. Why can't I see the wind?
Wow. Very profound.
And we'll finish with this last little bit.
Is it epilogue?
No. Before ink of night gave way to first glow and endless stars began to fade, a bird called, like it knew the earth was about to tilt, like it held time under its wing, like it had waited for this all night. And then that bird was joined by another, and then a few more. I suppose I'd been waiting too, for answers, illumination and ideas, while cocooned in a wool blanket, breathing, listening, thinking. I'd not slept. I'd been asleep too long. And that's all I'm going to read today.
That's all I'm going to play today.
Thank you. I appreciate your company and your music. And thank you. I appreciate your time.
I appreciate the $50 you're going to give me.
I'm supposed to have the last word, you know. I'm the author. Thanks.